Greetings guys, gals and non-binary pals, and welcome back to another virtual Pride video. Today's video isn't entirely Pride themed, but it aligns with the Pride calendar. And so today's theme is mental health. And so I went onto Instagram and I asked you to let me know what you wanted me to talk about and to ask me any questions that you want me to answer. Before I get into it, I just want to preface this by saying I am not a professional. Everything I'm about to say is based on my own personal experience and my learnings through 6 years of therapy. So with that being said, if you are struggling, please, I do highly encourage you seeking professional help. I just hope this video is able to validate you and maybe put you on the path to helping yourself and seeking help. Firstly, I had a lot of people saying, what do I do if my parents don't believe me or say that I'm making it up? And I would like to refer you to a previous video I've done, which is covering that issue entirely. I made a whole video about parents not believing you and why they need to listen. I will link that up here and also in the description if you want to check that out. The next question is therapy. Does it help? Do I recommend it? And how do you get over the fear of opening up to a complete stranger? Therapy has helped me so much, and I genuinely do not think I would be here if it weren't for therapy. It has changed my life and helped me through so much. I went into therapy when I was 14 and I did DBT therapy, which stands for dialectical behavioral therapy, which is designed for youth who are at risk of developing borderline personality disorder. And I found that so incredibly helpful. You learn so many skills and you learn how to cope with your emotions so much better. Just talking about it is so helpful within itself because talking about something removes the shame from it. When you're tunneling it in and you're hiding it, that is enforcing the idea that it is something to be ashamed of. And so by talking about it, you're removing the idea that it is something you have to hide. The more you talk about it, the easier it is to sort through your emotions and figure it out, as well as the more shame and guilt that is removed from feeling these things. And therapists are just able to help you validate your emotions and understand why you feel them and figure out ways to cope with them that suit you best. I learned a lot of stuff through DBT therapy that still helps me so much to this day. The number one thing that helped me and is important for everyone is to remember and to realize that your emotions and the way you feel them is completely valid. Everyone feels and experiences things in different ways, and just because they aren't upset by something doesn't mean you aren't allowed to be upset by something. Everything affects people differently, and it is totally okay to feel something in the way that you do, regardless of whether someone else feels that way or not. The other thing, and I've said this before, is your thoughts. Knowing that your thoughts are just that. They are thoughts and nothing more. They are not facts. Everything you think about yourself, you have the power to change. I say that as though it's easy. This is a really hard thing to do. But if you have the thought, I am blank, you are telling yourself that like it's a fact. You're saying, I am useless. Then you're going to believe you're useless because you're telling yourself you are useless. If you change that to the thought, I am having the thought that I am useless, it removes it from yourself. You're taking a step back. And you aren't saying it like a fact, you're saying it like a thought. You aren't telling yourself that it's true, you're telling yourself you're thinking it. And it sounds like it wouldn't be super helpful, but it actually really is. It completely changes the way you look at it and the way that you think about it. And taking that step back from it really helps you to reassess it. And taking it a step further than that, completely changing it and saying the opposite, like challenging your thought. So when you have the thought, I am useless, if you just flip it and you say to yourself, I am not useless, and you do that every single day, you start to believe that. First, it feels kind of silly and like you're lying to yourself, but over time, it does actually start to make a difference and you do start to believe it because your mind is so powerful and you are, in fact, in control of your mind, even though it feels really uncontrollable. Again, this takes a really long time. This doesn't just happen and you're like, right, I'm able to control my thoughts. Everything is easy now. It takes a lot of practice, but if you stick to it, it can really help. At least for me. Ride the wave. When you feel an emotion, don't try to stop yourself from feeling it. That emotion is there for a reason. Sometimes you don't have time to feel something. It's like you're really busy and you need to focus, and so you push these emotions away. And that's okay if you set aside time to feel it later. My therapist would always make me do worry time. Like every day at like 9 p.m. I'd have an alarm that went off and it was like worry time. And I'd have 20 minutes to go through my emotions and my thoughts and unpack it and figure out what I'm feeling and just feel it. And they call it ride the wave. When you have an emotion, just let yourself feel the emotion. And although it sucks sometimes, emotions are important. They are there for a reason, and pushing them back and bottling them up doesn't help you. I sort of like to put it in terms of emotions are like water, right? And you kind of build a dam. And the water keeps kind of building up and building up behind this dam. And then the dam starts cracking with all this water that's built up. And then it breaks. And then you are flooded. You are just flooded by all this emotion that's built up over the course of I don't know how long. And it all hits you at once. And that's when it is so, so hard and so, so heavy and so hard to deal with. And it is so much easier to give yourself a little bit of time every day to feel than to just let it all build up till you're at this breaking point. Again, very hard to do. I still struggle with this, but it does help. It does help. In terms of getting over your fear of therapy and opening up to a stranger, you just have to understand that this is their job and they talk to so many people with so many different struggles and they aren't going to judge you. Their entire job is to not judge you. Therapists are like the most non-judgmental, helpful people in the entire world. And as you get to talk to them, you do realize that. However, sometimes you don't gel with a therapist, and that's okay. They understand that. Like if you don't connect and you don't like your therapist, you can change your therapist and they will not judge you because you have to have a therapist that is right for you. And if they aren't right for you, please get a new one. It is not worth talking to someone that you don't feel comfortable opening up to. It gets easier the more you do it. It does feel really hard at first and it feels really weird, but the more you do it, the more used to it you get and the more helpful it becomes. I've had really, really good relationships with past therapists and I really miss some of my old therapists, like a lot. The next question is, are my triggers valid? Short answer, yes. Your triggers are always valid. You cannot control your triggers. Sometimes something will be fine and not trigger you, and then another time it will. It all depends on your state of mind in that moment and how you're feeling and what's going on, and it is totally okay to be triggered by different things at different times. The next question is dealing with depression on days when you don't want to get out of bed. I think the most important thing on those sorts of days is to not invalidate yourself. Like on those days, everything is hard, right? Like getting out of bed is hard and it's difficult to do anything. And I find you really easily invalidate yourself. Like if you had a plan for that day and you had work that you needed to do and you don't do it, you often end up making yourself worse by telling yourself you can't do anything, you don't achieve anything, you're useless, you're pathetic, and all that sort of thing, which as I said earlier, isn't helpful and it actually makes things worse. Instead, what you need to do is validate yourself for all the things you did do. If you get out of bed, say, I got out of bed even though I didn't want to. That's amazing. On those days, the smallest of things can feel so much harder than anything else on any good day. On your best day, you might write an essay and you're like, yeah, good job. That's amazing. I did something amazing. And you'll be really proud of yourself. And on your low days, sometimes just getting out of bed can feel harder than writing that essay. And you have to acknowledge that and validate that and say, today, this was a really hard thing for me to do, and I'm really proud of myself for doing it. Don't overlook the smaller things because some days those small things are so big. On different days and in different moods, everything is going to feel and affect you in different ways. And everything you feel is valid. If something is harder, that is okay. Just because it's easy for someone else doesn't mean it's not allowed to be hard for you. Just because it's usually easy for you doesn't mean it's not allowed to be hard for you sometimes. The next question is how to deal with panic attacks. I used to get panic attacks so much when I was younger, like the full-on like hyperventilating, nearly passing out panic attacks. As time has gone on, I've been able to see warning signs and things leading up to my panic attacks, so I'm usually able to prevent them. However, that has taken years in therapy to be able to do. Something a lot of people say is bite into a lemon. I've never done that because I don't usually have a lemon on hand, but apparently that's helpful. But something that is really helpful that I learned in therapy is temperature. And it's a bit messy, but it works so well. If you get like a bucket or a bowl of cold, preferably icy water, and you hold your breath and then shove your face in the water, making sure you get like your temple and your cheeks, and you hold your breath for as long as you can, and then you come out, it instantly pulls you down. Because what it does is it sends you into fight or flight mode. Basically, it tells you you're gonna die. Essentially what happens is your body thinks you're gonna die. And so it brings you out of your panic attack instantly and just completely calms you down, because you just get into this zone where everything is just kind of numb and serene and quiet. And although that doesn't fix the anxiety, it stops the panic attack and it allows you to bring yourself back down to be able to start working through your emotions. So that's something. I find that really effective. That one really helps. I used to always do that when I'd have my panic attacks. Also, like lying on the cold ground. Like I used to have tiles at my house at home and I would always lie on those, and that would always help ground me a little bit as well. So the next question is about self-harm and how to stop self-harming. And so if you don't want to hear me talk about self-harm, please do skip to this time. Because I understand that talking about it can be a bit triggering. Self-harm comes down to a couple of things a lot of the time, and one of those is being able to control the pain. Like you hurt really bad, like emotionally it hurts, but it's really hard to describe that, and it doesn't feel very valid a lot of the time, and you feel like the only pain that you're allowed to feel is physical pain. And so by inflicting that on yourself, you are in control of the pain, and being able to see it makes it feel valid. On top of this, it releases endorphins. However, it is a very, very temporary solution. It only stops in that moment when it is overwhelming. And then after that, it actually gets worse. Because what happens is that it's addictive. And when you're addicted to something like that, you start looking for reasons to do it. So if you've had a good day, you'll not feel like there's any reason to self-harm, right? But since you're addicted, you'll look for a reason. You will start sabotaging yourself in order to have a reason to hurt yourself. And it's this really fucked up cycle of searching for reasons to hurt yourself. And you aren't aware that you're doing it. It's completely unintentional. But once you catch yourself out and realize that that's what you're doing, and you stop self-harming, it actually starts to get easier and things start affecting you less than they used to, because everything would be escalated and everything would feel so much more heightened because you'd need a reason to do it. And so by stopping looking for those reasons to do it, things calm down. Now that's not to say it's easy. It's an addiction, right? It's hard to stop any addiction that you have. One thing that I found really helped me was writing the names of people that I loved or admired in the places that I wanted to cut. So I'd write like my mom, or my sister, or my best friends. I wrote the names of celebrities that I admired and just everyone. And I found that really, really helped. That for me is what got me through it. But I know a lot of people do the ice thing. You hold an ice cube in your hand. It has a similar sort of effect without hurting yourself. And apparently that's really helpful. So have ice in your freezer, and if you have a self-harm urge, grab the ice, make a fist, and just hold it there until it melts. And that should help. I also got a lot of questions about eating disorders and eating disorder recovery, and I am actually doing an entire video about eating disorders next week because there is so much to say and it is so misunderstood, and I think that needs a whole video. So I am doing that next week. The number one thing to remember is that no one can help you unless you help yourself. If you go to a therapist, you have to do the work that they tell you to do. When I did DBT, we had a manual that was about this thick, and it was just all homework. We had so much homework to do every single week. But if it wasn't for that work and all that homework that I did, I would not be where I am. You have to apply it to your life, and you have to try. You have to really, really try. And it is so, so difficult. And sometimes you won't, and that's okay. You just have to keep pushing through, and it slowly, slowly gets easier. You just have to keep trying and keep pushing, because at the end of the day, you are the only person that can help you. I can sit here and I can tell you what worked for me, and I can tell you to get help, but none of that works unless you actively are trying to help yourself. Recovery doesn't work unless you want it to. I hope that this has been able to validate you, and I hope I've been able to inspire you to help yourself. I love you. Please stay safe, keep fighting, and I will see you next time.